So, Phil, we know, and at GWI, I've been talking to lots of marketers. We know that I think the vast majority of marketers today are using AI. I think it's over 85%. Are you one of them? How do you think about AI? Is it something you're using every day?
Yes.
And what's your tool of choice?
Oh, good question.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of these tools which we need to adopt because fundamentally it will improve the work you do. There's a big asterisk on that, as always. At the start of the year with the podcast, I started to use AI to help me create an extra show. And I thought it would be fantastic at that, really bring up some amazing storylines, help me create really great content. It really didn't. It didn't just replicate me and allow me to create a really good second show a week. It wasn't as good as that. So I think maybe one thing to take away from that is that adoption, we should all be adopting it and trying it out, but we should also know where it's not as good. But for me, I use it regularly. I use it to sort of enhance my work. Particularly, I think what marketers should think about is where their weakness is. So for me, once I have an idea, I'm quite good at executing it. My weakness is thinking about other ideas before I dive in. So it can be really useful for me I use ChatGPT a lot. That's probably my tool of choice. To say, before I do a whole show about this very specific topic, give me 5 other topics which are similar and let me maybe just think, is there another option I could take or a slightly different angle? So I think it's useful to think about, what weaknesses do I have and how can it help me? How can I collaborate with it? Maybe we can talk about that later as well. But I'd love to throw the question back at you as well. I'm assuming you're a friend of AI.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a big friend of AI.
Yeah.
I'm a believer.
Yeah.
I use it every day. As a founder of business, CEO, you find that you're increasingly disconnected from the work, right? And you spend most of your time effectively managing. You just don't have time to get back in and do some of the complex bits of work. Like you want to analyze some customer data. You want to analyze some data from Salesforce. I want to look at user analytics. I like to use our product and understand the insights. And I've just not had time. But with AI, I can reconnect to that data because I can do things really quickly. Like on the train here, I was looking at the user analytics from yesterday and how the product was doing.
Yeah.
And I can do it for an agent. And, so it's a big unlock for me in my role. I'm obviously a big fan. But you do have to be careful. It's always about the quality of the data that's underlying it. You have to, sense check everything it's saying. When you start using it for things like strategy and ideas, and maybe you find this with the podcast, whatever you put into it tells you what a great idea it is.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a sounding board. So you kind of, you do need to treat it with a little bit of cynicism sometimes, but yeah, it's an unlock for data for sure.
It definitely has that confirmation bias element to it. And I think that's why what you guys are working on GWI is so smart, because you can plug in a data source which is reliable. I do it as well with my podcast. I've got a big CSV file of all of these insights which I've collected, and I plug that in to a ChatGPT agent and say, give me information based on that. And that definitely helps you get higher quality insights. I'm sure you guys see it as well. Of when you plug in good data, you get better insights, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, we know marketers are, running at AI, but how do you think it's made a tangible difference to the brands that they work for? Which brands are actually, can you see that are benefiting from AI and you're doing things differently or better or creating better campaigns? Do you have any good examples where it's really made a difference?
We see examples of companies that adopt AI and use it in campaigns, and there's a big backlash. We see examples like ChatGPT creating very effective billboard nationwide ad campaigns which didn't use AI at all. And it's not like we're definitely not in a world at the moment where AI is creating the best ads or building the best brands. That's not the case at all. I think there are use cases for it that are really interesting. There was this wonderful campaign with Deutsche Bahn, the German train company, a few years back now, maybe 5 years back. You might have heard of it. And they were trying to convince people to use train travel to travel around Germany. And Germany has these incredible deals where if you spend, I think it's like €100, you can have free trade travel for the whole month. So it's a real incentive to use it. But Germans also can fly around the world quite cheaply. So your competitor is a really strong competitor. This wonderful campaign that Deutsche Bahn did is they got pictures of really famous places around the world. The Grand Canyon, Harjan, sort of island mountains in Vietnam, the Himalayas, very famous places. And then they didn't use, I don't think they used AI for this. I think they used a human because it was pre-AI, but they found similar looking images in Germany. So the mountain ranges in Munich for the Himalayas, a canyon for the Grand Canyon, but the German version, different versions of Germany. And they said, why bother flying to these places when you can take the train for less than 100 euros? And that's the sort of idea which is like, oh, you could really elevate that with AI. Imagine imagine doing that in the UK with AI, all these wonderful pictures of different parts of the world. Plug that into an AI machine. It can probably find so many different variants of that. You don't have to go to the Eiffel Tower. You can go to Blackpool. Maybe not that example, but there are other examples like that. So I haven't quite seen a brand totally rejuvenate its marketing strategy based on AI alone. But I think there are tactics that I've seen which I imagine could be supercharged with the adoption of AI. That's what I think. Have you seen any? I wonder if there's any to come to mind.
No, not. I mean, not obviously in the, like when you're out and about and you're seeing campaigns and you're seeing ads and you're seeing products. There's no obvious like human impact yet in that world. I mean, we work with hundreds of brands and we spend a lot of time talking to them, and they have huge appetite to deploy AI to work better as companies do marketing better. But the focus when you go in there at the moment is really around, it's like building the infrastructure. It's how do they operate better?
Yeah.
How do you automate process? How do you move faster? How do you aggregate all the information you have to be able to get answers and do things quicker? So I think it's probably quite hard on the outside to see how it's visually turning up yet.
Yeah.
But that's a great example you talk about where you could deploy the creativity of AI.
So Tom, there will be marketers, maybe not so many researchers, but some researchers listening and watching this who think, well, I live in a world now where I've got the most powerful assistant that I've ever had, an AI assistant in my pocket. Why do I need to research my customers? Do I still need to research my customers? What's your take on that? I imagine you think you have a quite strong point of view.
I have you might be surprised to know that I do have a strong point of view on this, but after intuition, AI was the number one place to go for consumer insight for a marketer. And running research and using like subscription insights was far down the list, which was a little surprising actually. But I think kind of understandable, and AI is so easy to use and access, but it's actually in many cases quite dangerous, right? Because if you think what large language models have been trained on, it's just, they just don't have human data or consumer insight inside them. So they're predominantly built on the data that we as humans have written on the internet. So sources like Reddit dominate how large language models work. Firstly, they don't represent the world of people. They're very skewed to information that's being produced in the US and the West and not globally. They're very skewed to people that have actually written and put stuff online, which we know is not the vast majority of humans haven't done that. And so all their sourcing and aggregating articles about, topics and people, but these are typically very journalistic, the sources. So a really good example would be if you ask for, I don't know, tell me everything about millennials and how they consume social media, and you'll get an incredibly generic and probably very stereotypical and maybe slightly dangerous answer that as a marketer you shouldn't really rely on, because they ultimately was training that answer is probably journalistic articles. It might be stuff that people have written online in Reddit, which, it's not consumer insight. AI is incredible at working with data and understanding it and digesting all these large information sources, but you've got to feed it with the right context. So where it's evolving, where consumer insight is evolving with AI, and it's fascinating to see, is that as we move into a world where we use agents to do tasks at work, agents only work if they're fed the right information, the right context. And actually what agentic AI does is it provides a huge opportunity to drive consumer insights into far more workflows and decisions at work, because we can now just feed it into the large language model as and when we need it, and we can make sure that data is representative of the consumer that we're interested in. So rather than us think about AI as something that doesn't need consumer insight, the more we adopt AI and use it, the more we actually need consumer insight and the human data that it's providing. as agentic ways of working dominate how we show up at work and what we do, it's going to become more and more evident that we need that data.
Couldn't agree more. And I think listening to what you're saying, you start thinking, well, what is the opposite? Are you going to let your whole company strategy be dictated by something AI has given you? Well, you absolutely shouldn't. And, there's so much evidence which suggests as well, I know this is something you guys think about at GWI, which is you can't leave decisions to AI. You need to collaborate. What the study which I love and I think about a lot is a 2023 study in Lancet by Liebig, I think his name is. And it was a study which is on radiologists looking for cancerous cells in mammograms. And they looked at, I think, 1.1 million examples. Some they used AI to try and find the cancerous cells. Some they just used radiologists to try and find the cells. Some they used a combination of both. What you see from the study, and this is, you sort of wouldn't expect this because it's kind of black and white. Is the cell got is the cell cancerous or not? You expect AI to be quite good at this. It's not. It's better than the radiologist on its own. But when the AI and radiologists combine, when they collaborate, you get a better result. So more are spotted. Yeah. And that's, it's an example of AI can do the heavy lifting on lots, and then the radiologist can check for the anomalies, use his or her experience. And I think this is a crucial point when we think about AI. It's not something that we delegate. We don't create an AI agent which goes and does social media marketing for us. That's not going to get a good result. The best result is through collaboration. And that study I've just given you, it's on something really black and white. The cell either has cancer or not. In branding and business and marketing, it's so chaotic. It's not black and white. There's several shades of gray. There's 100 things you could do that could work. There's 100 things you could do that could not work. So it's even more important to collaborate with AI and not just delegate all your decisions to it.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And come back, if you bring back to consumer insights, so consumer insights is not a deterministic process. There is no, there's no right answer.
Yeah.
You can interpret data in different ways and you can discover and find stories. And it's certainly our experience since launching our Agent Spark product is it's brilliant at generating ideas and insights from the data because it can basically look at way more data more quickly. You can look at thousands of data points in seconds. It would take a human a long time, and it's great at generating insights and ideas. But the truth is that none of those are 100% the right answer because they're all right in some ways. And you like you said, you need to collaborate with the AI. And you as the expert and the marketer or the researcher are going to utilize that information to create a narrative, to find a story. So I think it's very interesting how those two things really work together.
We probably all had the experience of using AI to create something for us, thinking, oh, this is brilliant. What a great source. What a great idea. You click through, you learn a bit more about it, and it's totally untrustworthy. I'm interested in your take on what parts of AI can we trust? What can we rely on? And maybe what should we be a bit more cautious of?
Well, I think we can trust, for me, I think the more I use it, I trust its abilities to digest and analyze and summarize and vast amounts of data very quickly and information. Something that I can't do as a person. But in terms of the recommendations and the output, particularly when it's working with consumer insight data, is you still need the human analysis of that to decide if that's actually a good idea, right? So it's very good at kind of dissecting the trends and the data, but in terms of interpreting whether that makes sense or it's a good idea for the business or the brand, I think it still needs very much a human interpretation on that. And the other thing I've noticed using it a lot is it often won't challenge the kind of concepts and ideas you bring. It'll always try and affirm what you're asking for, which I think is slightly a dangerous echo chamber when you think about how the best ideas come. It's from sort of challenging each other and come to a consensus, but you don't always want to agree all the way to that consensus.
Yeah, if you ask it, should I run a marathon? It's just going to tell you, go for it.
Great idea.
Great idea.
Off you go.
Hold on, I've got chronic knee pain. No, still go for it. And I guess the same is true in business. If you,
100%,
and that's why I think you folks at GWI are doing some really interesting things, because if it has a strong data set, my guess is that it can start to challenge those sort of brand-led ideas.
Yeah. And I think the area where I've seen it work really well, actually, when we talk about challenge, is I think one thing we can do as humans is we have a lot of preconceived ideas. And I think probably as marketers, and we think we know a brand, we think we know the audience. And one area I've seen the agent work really well, I've been working in consumer insight for decades. And when you come and try and answer a question, you often start with the same bits of data and you work through the same questions. And so it will not have any of that preconception. And we'll just like look at all the data that we have available. And that creates a much wider aperture in terms of like where you're going to source the insights and the ideas from. And it's actually brilliant at challenging your human preconceptions. And it will come back with things that are totally counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful for marketers because we can get we always think that we know the brand, react to intuition, and we think we know this is what's going on with that audience. And actually, I think the magic for marketers is to find the kind of the unexpected. Like this is where the power of consumer insights comes from, I think.
Yeah. Just so I can understand that, this is the idea that almost every researcher will have a natural bias. They'll think, all right, we're targeting homeowners. We need to look at social demographic, economic data, or we need to look at credit card data. Whereas what you're saying with AI is it won't have that bias when it goes into the analysis. It will look at more. It will increase the aperture, like you say, and might discover an insight which you would never even think to spot for. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. It's just because it's starting with a really completely blank page. So it can do that, but it can also process just far larger amounts of data, right? So to give you an example, we're working with a customer the other day. They like to take things that they find on social media or trends that they hear written about, and they call these signals, right? And they're trying to quantify them in our data and see if these things are actually how important they are, right? As a human analyst, to do that, it could take you a couple of days to dig through all the data to sort of figure out if that trend is true or not, or if it's significant. The agent can literally do it in a minute because it can just consume vast quantities of data. So it can very quickly tell you whether that signal or trend is valid, there's a good data behind it. And that's where it really works well for the kind of counterintuitive, because it can just explore things you'd never consider or have time to get into and look at. So I think from that perspective, it's very powerful. Phill, you're obviously, speaking to a lot of marketers at the cutting edge of marketing. I imagine you have a good understanding or good view of where marketing is going. Do you think you can use your crystal ball and tell us what marketing looks like in 5 years' time?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to change the short-termism, the reliance on platforms that give us instant results versus ones that give us long-term rewards. It's going to be hard to get out of that. The drug of Facebook ads and Meta ads and Instagram ads, which provide instant return on investment. We're seeing it a little bit with SEO. There's a slight shift towards we need to optimize for LLM, but it's still the same thing. This is what I hope marketers will continue to learn, because I think the best companies in the world already know this. And it's to not think about the platforms we can go to reach our customers. That's not really important. It's not really important to think, we can reach a bunch of millennials on Meta ads, let's just go there. It's instead to think about, how do these customers deeply understand these customers, understand how they make decisions, and then find a way to influence them that way by going from a sort of different angle. It's ridiculous, but there's this wonderful study in South Korea, and I love it. I talk about it all the time because it's so counterintuitive. They wanted to increase loyalty with their customers. It was an e-commerce company, send out products to people, wanted to increase loyalty, keep people coming back. Obvious way to do this. This is what a textbook would tell you to do. Send them a discount code afterwards. Next time you buy with us, you get 20% off. That's the obvious thing to do. That's what every textbook would tell you. A couple of researchers worked with these South Korean e-commerce stores in a peer-reviewed study, which we can look at online. They decided to do something totally different. They had a control where the customers were sent nothing after they made a purchase, a variant where they were sent a thank you note, just said thank you, printed thank you note, and then a second variant where the thank you note was handwritten. It actually appeared to be handwritten. It wasn't actually handwritten. It was hand signed, but it looked like it was handwritten. They then measured the sales. The control, that was the baseline. Let's call that zero average dollars. The one who got the printed thank you note had an increase in sales of $29 versus the control. The one who had a handwritten thank you note got an increase in sales of $59 versus the control. And what I love about this is it shows marketing is chaotic, world is chaotic. There is any number of different things we can try in order to increase our sales. And one of them could be as stupid as let's handwrite a thank you note to all of our customers because it genuinely could have a bigger return on investment than anything else. I tried this with the podcast. Yeah. I thought, well, I want to increase the numbers of reviews for Nudge. And I got a group of 40 people who had recently subscribed to the show. 20 of them got an email saying, please leave me a review. 20 got a handwritten note, picture of a handwritten note saying, please leave me a review. I got, I think, 8 reviews from the 20 who received the note, just 2 who received the email. So you can replicate this. You can make it work. My hope is that in the future, people will think about customers first, not platforms and ways of reaching customers first. And then also be very creative, because it doesn't just have to be Facebook ads or Instagram ads that we use to reach our customers. It can be something as wacky as a handwritten note.
Do you think that the human will become more important, like the personal touch, as everything becomes more and more automated, I guess?
This is really off topic. I was at a gig last night and it was brilliant. It was like a local Bristol group. They were called Buena Bristol Social Club. They were a cover of Buena Vista Social Club. And I had this thought when I was watching them, which is like, when we talk about what is the antidote to AI, what jobs are totally future-proof, this is it. You cannot get an AI to replicate a human performance because there's something about it which is totally different. To your point, humans are the only things that will be future-proof. Creating things that are clearly created by humans will be safe from AI. If I was an artist right now painting, what I would be doing is, of course, perfecting my craft, but I would also be doing things which helped my audience understand the effort that goes into creating my craft. There's this amazing study by Duke. Sorry to drop another study on you, but I think it's relevant in this scenario. Professor Matt Johnston shared it with me on the show. It's this really interesting study, and it's with art. And they show people in the study 2 images. One is created by AI, one is created by human. People prefer the AI version. That's not surprising. There should be AI content which is better. So not all human content is going to be better. The trick is that when they pick the AI version, some are told this is created using AI, some are lied to and told it's created using human. It's created with a human. When they think it's created by a human, they say it is 59% more beautiful on a scale from 1 to 9, and they think it's worth 71% more. We have this ingrained bias for things that humans create. And we assume even AI created content is better if we think a human has created it. Now, you could argue that is something that'll change over time. Once we get more used to AI, it'll wash out and we won't have this bias anymore. Or you could argue that the human will always be valued more than the robot, that the human will always be valued more than the machine. And if the latter is the case, then I think companies have to be really careful. And that what they have to do is embrace AI, but keep that human touch, whatever it might be. It might be writing thank you notes. It might be things like this, getting people in organizations face to camera, making sure there's a human behind it. Or it could be something totally radical. Maybe it's, creating a Buena Vista Social Club cover band and doing performances. But I do think the human will continue to be important. I'm sure one thing you see a lot at GWI is the people who have access to the insights really like that they have access to those insights. It's something that they get a lot of value from. Do you see that remaining the same, or can you see insights starting to be democratized across an organization?
You know what? It's changing very quickly. Yeah. So I can tell you from my personal experience. So before I started GWI, I worked in insights in an agency, and I was in a very small team of, I think, 3 people. And we did gatekeep all the tools and systems and the data sets. And, it's a real expert thing to learn as a craft. I spent years learning how to find insights inside crosstabs, and you don't kind of want to give that up too easily. But yeah, we would service the whole organization, and everyone would come to us, say, find me an insight that says this, and we go away and find it. And that whole, I've seen over the years of running GWI, it's one of the core things that we really believe in is that that process is being democratized, right? The need for data and insights is just everywhere and through the organization. And actually, also the pressures we all work on now, like the speed and the pace and the need to like do things quickly. We can't sit around and wait for our research colleagues to kind of come up with insights and supply them. We need to do it now and find it. So I think those kind of working pressures have sort of transformed that kind of the gatekeeping team that want to hold insights and the expertise around it. And I can see this going out and talking to our customers is that that's not how they're thinking about it now. You know, they want to, what they primarily want to do is drive insight through their organizations. And they're doing that by embracing technology and not, also software. So making sure that dashboards and systems and tools are available to everyone and not just the research team, and that they're easy to use. And that's been a principle of GWI for years. And I think that's where AI is particularly powerful for consumer insight, because you can now distribute and you can enable people whose day job is not consumer insight and haven't spent 20 years learning how to analyze crosstabs to find insights quickly. The thing that they do want us to help them with, and they are very conscious of, is that there are clear guardrails around how people develop and come up with ideas. So insights are not deterministic. There isn't one answer that's correct. There's a range of ways you can look at a different question, and you can interpret data in many different ways. So AI can help with that massively, but it can also tell you things that are probably a bit off message, off brand, the things are just untrue. But I think generally there's been a massive shift in outlook from, I want to keep this expertise to myself and I'll be the expert, to I actually want to drive the organization through consumer insight.
You don't have to answer this, Tom.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in your take on if somebody listening or watching to this is a trained researcher, a bit like you, spent a career in understanding insights and gathering insights. What do they do in their career to adopt? My understanding is we can plug insights into every department in an organization. You're sort of maybe the middleman of the researcher is maybe not as needed as much. Should researchers sort of train and become specialists to adopt in those scenarios, or what do you sort of suggest they do?
If you look at an organization, right, very few people work in market research. Yeah. There are very few people who are expert in consumer insight, but it is something that's needed by huge swathes of an organization. All the company should be making decisions based on an understanding of their customers and consumers. So the demand for insight is much greater than any of our, consumer insight professional, the people we work with every day. It's far bigger demand than they can service. It's not like we're saying that the AI is going to replace the expert. In fact, we probably need more people who are expert with consumer insight. What AI helps them do, work much quicker. It helps you uncover stories. It helps you validate data. You can do very long-winded tasks very quickly. Like you can validate a trend in 60 seconds when it previously took a couple of days of analyzing data. You can, really test and learn and discover things. And I found actually it can help you with storytelling and uncovering insights, because you can kind of play around with different narratives and stories because it's so quick. With previously, it would take you just too much time. So it can make you better at your job, firstly. But I think more importantly, it can help them just deliver these insights into the organization much more quickly, which actually sort of propels consumer insight as a far more important discipline within an organization than it has been historically.
To your point, I think that might even benefit the expert researchers. They're not going to feel it's going to be easier for them to promote their ideas if you have a democratized organization that all understand insights than it would be if they were holding it all themselves.
Yeah. If you think the way that market research has worked since its inception, and that we talked about the experts and holding the knowledge and experiences, what would really happen is you go away and commission a market research study, and it would sit on a digital shelf somewhere, like in a PowerPoint, never looked at, used. And the power of consumer insights have not really been driven through organizations as they should be. So the researcher who embraces what's happening with AI, it can really help propel as we said, and put insight into the core of every sort of business process, every decision. And that's really important. And I think, as I said, AI needs great data. And so consumer insight is the data, the foundational context that AI is going to need to work for companies. But actually, if you go around and speak to our customers, people they're not, they want to embrace this. And they are building the infrastructure, the tools and the systems in order to do this. But it's a big job. You need to get all your data sorted out. It's a lot of work.
So don't stop being a researcher is our point as well.
No, I think it's that typical thing you talk about with AI. It's like you said about the radiologist. We're not going to need less, we'll probably need more because it creates demand. Like you increase the supply, you create more demand for it. It's a healthy future for the market researcher. So I guess you see lots of marketers using AI to help, generate consumer insights. But, what do you think the risk is of them solely relying on AI to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered quite a few of the risks. And I think there's one, which is individuals who rely on AI, it's kind of been proven that their critical thinking capacities, they lower if they're not careful. And we've also seen it from the other point of view that consumers who see AI generated content tend to not value that content as highly. As we've all had the experience of getting a cold email from someone who's so clearly used AI to write the email and it just puts you off. You would rather a poorly written, typo-ridden human email where someone's actually taken the effort to write it. And this sort of goes back to this point we spoke about, which is people do value the input you put into something. Wonderful study by Schindler in 2003. Group of participants has shown a presentation on something dull. I think it was on electronic ink and optical switches. One group of the viewers are told it took the presenter just 27 minutes to prepare that talk. Another group are told it took 8 hours. Those who hear it took more time value the talk more, even though the talk is identical. They follow this up in a real world scenario where they get real estate agents. This is, again, 2003, so computers are starting to be adopted. And sometimes the real estate agent says, I spent the past 8 hours collecting this list of houses. I think they're perfect for you. That was the truth. That was what the real estate agent did. I don't think they do that anymore. They did back then. Another real estate agent said a lie, said, I just used a computer, which is quite similar to, using AI. And it took just 30 minutes for me to pull this list together. They then monitored exactly how many of those people went and viewed the houses, how many of those people went and bought houses. And they find the same thing. When they think they used a shortcut and they just took 30 minutes, people don't value it as much as when they think people put more time into it. And I think if we relate this all back to AI, we just have to be careful, because if we totally adopt AI, there is this chance that our customers might backlash. They might think, oh, this isn't a company worth doing business with because they're not putting in the effort. They might not say that explicitly, but that might be their subjective feeling in some way or another. And that would be, if I was running an organization, that's something I'd be very careful with. And for me, this is why ChatGPT at the moment, or OpenAI, the company, they're not using AI to create their ad campaigns at the moment, because I think they know that, and I think they know the risks attached there. But I'd love your point of view as well, Tom, in terms of what do you think you think some of the main risks are of total adoption?
The risk on relying on AI without good data flowing into it is that you think about AI is just not trained to answer the questions that marketers have. It doesn't have the context of the consumer, the marketplace. So it's vital that we put human data into AI, or we're not going to get the right answers. We're not going to get the right insights. We're not going to have a real understanding of consumers. And you can see it yourself. Like if you go in and test the kind of questions marketers have, and you just put it straight into an AI product without any additional context or data for it to reference, and it will be incredibly generic. Like we're testing things, say like, oh, can you generate a social media strategy and campaign to reach this Gen Z audience? The output was like super generic that anyone else could have created. But when you put it through the lens, when you inject GWI's data, like the human data of their target audience, you get something that's very specific, very relevant. It's talking about the kind of content they like. And, that's something that's actually actionable. And the problem is if you use like AI out the box, you're getting a generic non-actionable answers that, and it's also what everyone else has access to.
Yeah.
So everything ends up being the same,
Yeah.
And it ends up being a bit vanilla.
If there's one way you want to kill your marketing performance, it's to look like all of your competitors. There is such benefit in terms of standing out, such a benefit in terms of being distinct. Distinctiveness allows you to get recall, allows you to get people to engage. And it like you say, if you're just using ChatGPT to write your social media posts, and wow, you just scroll through Facebook, if you can still find a brand on Facebook, you see so many just talking in such generic terms. You just don't even read it. You don't even, because we are pattern recognition beings, and if something fits our perceived pattern, a brand typically talks that way, you just don't pay attention anymore. It's stuff that stands out, that captures the mind, and we could probably name 101 ads which do that really well. At the moment, unless you plug in a really good data source like GWI, an AI out of the box isn't going to be able to tell you that.